My wife became a doctor, and celebrated by filing for divorce the same day. I signed without argument, and vanished completely. She laughed with her colleagues about dead weight. Never imagining I meant it when I left. 3 years later, she located me through hospital records, finding 200 missed calls and texts I'd ignored. Part 1, 8 years. That's how long I spent building someone else's dream, while mine collected dust in the corner. 8 years of working double shifts to pay for her medical school tuition. 8 years of frozen dinners, because she was always studying. 8 years of cancelled vacations because she needed to focus on exams. 8 years of being told, once I graduate everything will be different. The graduation ceremony was on a Thursday in May. I requested the day off work specifically to be there. Even bought a new shirt for the occasion. After all, this was supposed to be our moment. Our achievement, our future finally beginning. I sat in that packed auditorium watching her walk across the stage. When they called her name, I stood up and clapped harder than anyone else. 8 years of sacrifice was finally paying off. At least that's what I thought. The ceremony ended around noon. Families were taking pictures, celebrating, making dinner plans. I waited by the car while she posed with her classmates. That diploma clutched in her hands like a golden ticket. When she finally walked over to me, I expected a hug, a kiss, maybe even a thank you. Instead, she handed me a manila envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Divorce papers," she said like she was discussing the weather. I already signed my part. I stared at the envelope, then at her. She wasn't joking. There was no emotion in her eyes, no hesitation in her voice. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This was planned. "Are you serious right now?" "Dead serious. Look, I don't need you anymore. I have my degree, I have job offers, I have a future. You were helpful during school. But that chapter of my life is over. Helpful. 8 years of my life reduced to one word, helpful. So what was I then? Some kind of financial aid program?" She shrugged. "You knew what you were signing up for." I was clear about my priorities from day one. Medical school came first. Now I'm a doctor and I want to start fresh. No dead weight, dead weight. That's what 8 years of marriage meant to her. Dead weight. Her colleagues were starting to gather around us, probably wondering what the intense conversation was about. Some of them I recognized from the few social events I'd attended over the years. They all knew I was the husband who worked overtime to pay their friends' tuition. I opened the envelope and skimmed through the papers. Everything was already filled out. She divided our assets, claimed the car she wanted, even listed the apartment as solely hers since she'd be making doctor money soon. I was getting the bare minimum the law required. "You've really thought this through, haven't you?" "I'm not stupid, I know what I want." I looked around at her classmates watching us, at the families celebrating nearby, at the woman I'd spent 8 years supporting who was now discarding me like a used textbook. Then I did something that surprised everyone. Especially her. I pulled out a pen from my jacket pocket, and signed every page without reading the rest. Right there in the parking lot in front of her medical school colleagues. If you'd like to continue this story, the remaining parts are available on my website. You'll find the link in the bio. And if you have a moment, I'd love to know where you're watching from. So please feel free to share in the comments. I ended our marriage with the same casualness she'd started this conversation. "There," I said, handing the papers back to her. "Congratulations on your graduation and your divorce." Her mouth dropped open. She'd expected drama, begging, maybe even anger. What she got was efficient cooperation. "Wait, that's it. You're not going to fight this? Try to talk me out of it." Why would I fight for someone who just called me dead weight? I turned and walked away from the car, leaving her standing there with her diploma in one hand, and our signed divorce papers in the other. I could hear her colleagues starting to whisper among themselves. I didn't look back, I didn't raise my voice, I didn't make a scene. I simply walked out of that parking lot, and out of her life completely. The last thing I heard as I turned the corner, was one of her classmates asking, "Who was that guy? And why did he just walk away from his own car?" I kept walking. She wanted to start fresh with no dead weight. Perfect. She was about to find out exactly what dead weight I'd been carrying all these years. 3 days after the graduation parking lot incident, I was gone, not just from the apartment, but from the entire state. While she was probably expecting me to come crawling back with apologies and flowers, I was executing the most thorough disappearing act of my life. The beauty of being married to someone who never paid attention to finances was that she had no idea what I actually controlled. She thought she was getting the apartment because she'd be making doctor money. What she didn't know was that I'd been paying the rent from my personal account for the past 2 years, not our joint account. The lease was in my name only. I spent those 3 days liquidating everything that mattered. Closed our joint accounts, and moved my half to a new bank she'd never heard of. Cancelled the utilities that were in my name. Transferred my phone number to a new carrier. Even cancelled the Netflix subscription she loved so much. By Saturday morning, I was loading my pickup truck with everything I actually cared about. Clothes, tools, my grandmother's china that she never appreciated anyway. And my collection of vintage records, she always complained were taking up space. Portland, Oregon became my destination. Not because I had ties there. But because I didn't. Clean slate in a city where nobody knew my story, and nobody would think to look for me. The apartment I found was nothing fancy. 1 bedroom 15 minutes from downtown, with a view of a parking lot instead of the city skyline. She always talked about wanting. But it was mine, completely. Legally, financially mine. Landing a job took less than a week. Construction management, for a mid-size company, that specialized in commercial buildings. The pay was solid, the hours were reasonable. And nobody asked about my personal life. Perfect. Meanwhile, back in our old city, she was discovering the reality of her fresh start. The first sign of trouble came when she tried to pay the rent. Turns out the landlord doesn't accept, I'm going to be a doctor as legal tender. When the electricity got shut off 3 days later, followed by the internet, she finally understood that I hadn't been dead weight after all. I'd been the foundation. Her text messages started the first week. We need to talk, this is ridiculous. You can't just disappear. I watched them come in and deleted each one without reading past the preview. The calls began during week 2. 27 calls in one day, I let every single one go to voicemail. Then deleted the voicemails without listening. If she had something important to say, she could put it in writing through her lawyer. By week 3, she was reaching out to my former coworkers trying to get my new contact information. My old supervisor called to give me a heads up that some frantic woman claiming to be your wife had shown up at the office. I thanked him for the warning, and told him I had no wife. Month 2 brought the real panic. She'd apparently tried to use me as a reference for an apartment application, only to discover my old phone number was disconnected. She contacted my sister, my parents, even my old college roommate. Each of them got the same message from me. I don't know anyone by that name. The most desperate move came during month 3. She somehow tracked down my new employer, and called the main office, claiming there was a family emergency. My boss took the message and passed it along. I told him the truth, I had no family emergency because I had no family by that name. He understood completely, and quietly flagged her number in their system. What she didn't realize was how much I was enjoying my new life. Portland suited me, the coffee was better. The people minded their own business. And nobody expected me to sacrifice my present for someone else's future. I joined a hiking group that met every weekend. Started taking evening classes in project management. Even began dating again, though nothing serious. Just rediscovering what it felt like to have conversations that didn't revolve around medical school stress and study schedules. The woman I met at a bookstore coffee shop was everything my ex-wife wasn't. She had her own career as a graphic designer. Paid for her own meals, and actually seemed interested in my thoughts and opinions. When I told her I'd recently gotten divorced, she simply nodded and said, "Good for you for knowing when to walk away. No drama, no analysis of what went wrong. No suggestions for counseling or second chances. Just acceptance that, sometimes marriages end, and moving forward, is the healthiest option." By month 6, I'd stopped checking if my ex-wife had tried to contact me. I'd built a routine that had nothing to do with her schedule, preferences, or needs. Wake up at 6:00, coffee while reading the news. Work from 7 to 4, gym or hiking after work. Dinner with friends, or a quiet evening at home reading. Simple, peaceful, mine. The irony wasn't lost on me that while she was probably telling her colleagues about her fresh start as a newly single doctor, I was the one actually living fresh. No dead weight dragging me down. No one treating my contributions as temporary conveniences. She wanted to start over with a clean slate. I'd given her exactly that, plus something she hadn't expected. A completely empty slate where I used to be. 3 years into my Portland life, I was living better than I had in the entire 8 years of marriage. What I didn't know was that 3 years into her medical career, my ex-wife was discovering that reality had a sense of humor. I found this out later through a mutual acquaintance, who couldn't resist sharing the gossip. Apparently, her fresh start hadn't gone according to plan. Turns out, being a brand new doctor isn't the instant wealth and prestige she'd imagined. Her starting salary as a resident was barely more than what I'd been making in construction. Except now she had 6-figure student loan debt hanging over her head. Debt that used to be our problem, when she needed my signature for the consolidation loans. The apartment she'd claimed in the divorce papers became a financial nightmare within 6 months. Without my income supporting the rent, utilities, and groceries. She burned through her savings before her first residency paycheck arrived.